Hi everyone, welcome to Sports Insider. I'm Dan Lobby. Chris Fedor is off today, so I am joined by Bud Shaw here in the co-host seat. We've got a packed show for you today. Kay Cabot will join us shortly. Joe Vardon will talk Cavaliers. They have hit the All-Star break, and then we are less than a week away from pitchers and catchers reporting. That always feels good when there are inches of snow on the ground, Bud. So Paul Hoynes will join us to talk about spring training. Let's get right to it, though. Let's bring in Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter, by phone. Kay, how are you today?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing?
Doing well, and Kay, Hugh Jackson has gotten his Browns baptism thanks to some players that were left over from previous regimes. Of course, we know about Johnny Manziel, and then Armani Bryant indicted yesterday. What is Armani Bryant's future with this team, if there even is one?
Well, for starters, he probably will be suspended for a certain period of time. It depends on the outcome of the NFL investigation and the legal matter. So at that point, then he'll be suspended probably for something. I don't know whether it'll be 4 games or whatever the case may be. So the Browns then will have to make their determination, do they want to deal with this sort of thing or do they not? And, he started to show some really good promise last year as an edge rusher after they moved him to linebacker. And, from a talent standpoint, I actually think, he is really coming around and you need guys like that. But they'd have to have some really strong assurances that, that he can put this sort of stuff behind him, because they did take a chance on him in the draft, albeit with a late round pick. But, he had been on probation at the time for selling marijuana to an undercover cop on his college campus. And they took a chance on him, and he went out and got a DUI right after that. Now, since that time, he's really kind of been under the radar. So, it's unfortunate that this happened because he really was coming around as a player.
Kay, if you don't mind, if we switch just quickly to the Manziel issue, is there any way the league could come down and look at this investigate him in this incident and hand out any more than a 4 or 6 game suspension based on the fact that they haven't suspended him to date for this offense? The NFL can suspend Johnny for however long they deem necessary based on what they find. I mean, regardless of what happens to him in the legal system, they will do their independent investigation, and if they feel like he needs to sit down for a year, they'll get him out of here for a lengthy period of time. So anything can still happen. It can be 4, 6, 8. It can be whatever they decide that they want to do. Now they are going to have to, I'm sure, also then deal with the NFLPA and their very, very qualified lawyer Heather McPhee, who got Ray Rice's lengthy suspension basically overturned. So there's always that. So it could be a long and drawn out thing, but the NFL could send a very strong and clear message with a long suspension. Well, I knew they could do it regardless of whether there was a charge filed or an arrest made, but you're saying they can go from 0 games in a guy's history to a full season if they want.
Yeah, because this comes under the personal conduct policy, and it's not the same thing as the substance abuse policy, where there are certain, criteria that you meet. In stage 1, you get this. In stage 2, you get that. In stage 3, indefinite suspension for a minimum of a year. So it's not like that. It's more arbitrary.
Well, even as I ask those questions, I imagine people in the chat room going, "Who cares? He's not our problem anymore." So I'll turn it over to you to ask a relevant question.
Well, let's talk about free agency, Kay, because that's the next big step for the Browns once the league year starts next month. In the past, they haven't been overly active in free agency. Do you expect that to change under this new regime? Or, is this one of those things where maybe the analytics guys say that, you should tread carefully in free agency?
Well, I think the analytics will show that you do need to tread pretty carefully in free agency. So there will be that. But I think there will be a couple of guys that they will be able to look to. And Dan, you've been doing some really great slideshows on all of this. And, I think that if you look at some of the, Bengals receivers like a Mohamed Sanu, I mean, if you could get your hands on a guy like that, I think that, you might be willing to spend your money there. And I would do that, in a heartbeat. So if you can get a few good impact players. Now, you don't want to go crazy, but, if you can add maybe 3 difference makers in free agency and then, aim for at least, 3 or 4 in the draft, then you're well on your way to stocking the team with some talent.
Mary Kay, how much stock do you put in the fact that Haslam, back on the night that the season ended, called this a multi-year rebuild? If that's the case, why would they do anything in free agency? Or do you think he was just buying himself some time?
Well, I think he was just being realistic. I mean, anytime you start all over again and you realize that you have messed up your first-round picks going back 3 or 4 years in most cases, then, you know that you've got a kind of a mess to clean up. I mean, they're still feeling the repercussions of the Johnny Manziel, Justin Gilbert draft. I mean, now, Cam Irving, let's see, what's going to happen with that. It's just been a long stretch. Obviously, Trent Richardson, Brandon Weeden, it's been a long stretch of blowing those first-round picks. I think Jimmy is just kind of being realistic and saying, you know what, we just don't have enough talent on this football team. That was the whole theme of that night, was we haven't drafted well, we haven't acquired enough talent. And so I think it was just him just trying to say, hey, folks, you know what, you're not going to bring in Hugh Jackson and then win 11 games this year.
All right, Mary Kay, last question. We are 2.5 months away from the draft. We haven't even had the combine yet. We haven't had individual workouts yet. There's a lot that's going to happen between now and then. But just right now, with obviously that caveat that so much can change in 2.5 months, what do you think the Browns will do at number 2?
Well, I think they will go quarterback at number 2 unless something unforeseen happens in free agency whereby they come up with a really good quality starting quarterback in free agency or in a trade before that, somebody that they really know that they can win with for a period of 3 or 4 years. And there might be a couple of those guys that become available. So if you can get your hands on an established starter, somebody that has already proven himself in the league, then that frees you up to do something else with that number 2 pick, and then you're looking at, a Joey Bosa or something like that. But for right now, I'm going to say they'll go quarterback at number 2, and I'm guessing that it'll come down to either Jared Goff or Carson Wentz. And I guess you could throw Paxton Lynch into that mix too. I'm not really exactly sure where they're going to have those guys ranked, but it'll be one of those guys.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter. Thanks for the time, Mary Kay.
Thank you, guys.
So, it seems like quarterback would be the way to go. And I'm curious, look, I haven't done all my homework on these guys, but Jared Goff, of course, is getting the raves as that pro-ready guy. Mm-hmm. Carson Wentz, the guy with the high ceiling. And I wonder if maybe in the back of Hugh's mind, he's thinking, I had a guy like Carson Wentz in Baltimore. He came from a smaller school, has a big arm, good size. I wonder if I could turn him into a Joe Flacco type.
Well, in honor of Fedor not being here, Cassie and I do agree that all things being equal, maybe not even being equal, that you'd have to try to find that guy if there's a possibility there. I always hear people say, oh, the only way you can take Goff is if he's the next Andrew Luck. Well, we know he's probably not.
Yeah.
So is the only way you can take Bosa if you know he's the next J.J. Watt? I don't know. Maybe he's got a better chance of being that. I just think if you have a guy that projects as a really top guy that you can develop, finally develop that guy, this is the year to do it.
Yeah, I mean, the question, would you take Teddy Bridgewater at 2 in this draft? Knowing what we know about him now? Yeah, you probably would. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears and talk Cavaliers and bring in one part of our Cavaliers reporting team, Joe Vardon. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing great, Dan. How you doing?
All right, Joe, it is the All-Star break, but of course a lot of people in Cleveland, their attention is turned to next Thursday. That, of course, is the NBA trade deadline. Are you getting a sense that the Cavs are going to do anything significant in the next week?
Yeah, absolutely. David Griffin's been working the phones for a while. He wants to, quote, make the Cavs' ninth man better. So you could take that to mean he goes out and finds a ninth man, or he goes out and finds a fourth or fifth or sixth man, and everybody slides back a seat. He's got some weapons at his disposal. He has a trade exception. But the payroll being what it is, the luxury tax being what it is, there's going to be some hurdle to clear in terms of moving some money around. That means like maybe they try to move Anderson Varejão's contract, which is going to be really hard to do. Or maybe they give up on Timofey Mozgov and they trade him as part of a swap to get a player that they feel that they need. Their plans almost changed dramatically last night when Kevin Love was running off the court with his shoulder hanging by his side. But it looks like Kevin's okay. Had that been different, they would have, they would have needed to do something else and try to find a stretch four. But now, I think they can focus on some other areas.
Joe, what would you expect those other areas to be then?
Well, Bud, I think they want another shooter like a Kyle Korver, which is hard it's hard for me to discuss just because, they have J.R. Smith, and if you bring Kyle Korver in, how does that change your starting lineup? I'm not sure. They want somebody who can defend at the wing position, maybe a little better than Richard Jefferson. It looks like Richard's going to be the guy who loses here. He's played, I think, admirably in the backup role to LeBron, and it's just, I think when all is said and done, whether they get what's called a 3-and-D guy, somebody who can chuck threes and defend off the bench, or if they try to make a big splash, with like a Korver, Richard's going to be the odd man out. I mean, I've also heard, Seth Belos's name. The Hawks everyone keeps coming back to the Hawks because it feels like they're going to blow this thing up, and so you could see Horford and Korver available. I don't know if the Cavs have what it takes to swing that deal, though.
Joe, you look at Kyrie Irving in his last couple games, 35 points last night, 32 on Monday against Sacramento, and the thing you really like, he's starting to hit three-pointers again. He was 5 of 8 against the Kings, 3 of 6 last night. We've talked about this a number of times. He's coming off that serious knee injury. It's been a little while with him getting back, but if this is the Kyrie that the Cavaliers are going to have for the rest of the season and in the playoffs, does it change your view about how they match up against the Spurs and, more importantly, the Warriors?
I'm afraid of the Warriors now, Dan. I never was. I thought last year, all things being equal, the Cavs were the better team, certainly had more talent, could have won the finals. But something's changed with the Warriors right now. And they're so much better than they were a year ago. They're so much more efficient. And they play with such ridiculous confidence that it's gotten to the point where you start to wonder if anybody, even a team that has LeBron and a healthy Kyrie, can get to that level. Now, there are, I'm not the best at math, but there's, 4 months from now until June, roughly, until the finals begin. And if the Cavs are fortunate enough to get there, that's a lot of time for something to go wrong in Golden State, for somebody to get hurt, for there to be, something that you don't foresee, like, they get the player in trouble. You don't know. And then, there's also, funny things can happen in series. The Cavs were a bad bounce on LeBron's last shot from the regulation from winning game 1. Theoretically, they could have won the first 3 games. So I guess you never know. But to answer your question, I love the way Kyrie's playing right now, and it's great news for the Cavs, but the Warriors are a whole different deal.
Joe, can you take the risk of changing your team at the trade deadline to match the Warriors and then find out that you're actually playing the Spurs in the finals? Aren't those two different animals?
Yeah, but that's a great point. And it's like, the Spurs got throttled by the Cavs and they were embarrassed by the Warriors. But my goodness, they're 45 and 8. If the Warriors weren't on the 96 Bulls heels, we'd be all doing backflips over how good the Spurs are. So I totally agree with the point, Bud, that I think you're trying to make. I would not be changing the Cavs at this point. I do think they should make a move. They have the means to do it. So you want to make yourself better, but I do not support moving Kevin or this nonsense of trading Kyrie for Chris Paul or something like that, which the Cavs would never do. No, I don't like that. I think you've gotta take the ridiculous talent that you've amassed and try to meld yourself into the kind of team that can play with the efficiency of the Warriors or the Spurs, and hope for the best in June.
All right, Joe, it is report card time. Final question here. Give me a grade for the Cavaliers at the All-Star break.
I'm going to give them a B. I've liked a lot of things that I've seen. I liked some things under David Blatt. I'm shocked that the Cavs had the fortitude to make the move that they made. I think it was the right move long term. And since they've made the move, I like what Ty Lue has tried to do in terms of trying to get the Cavs to do some things that they weren't doing under David. Now, they don't get an A because they've lost more games than they probably should, and they didn't treat David with the respect probably that any head coach deserves. So they don't get an A, but they get a B. There's room to improve, and I am excited to see how this thing turns out.
All right, Joe, thanks for the time.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, Bud, I think you bring up an interesting point when it comes to the Warriors, because there is so much talk, not just with the Cavaliers, I'm sure in other markets as well, about, well, you have to replicate the Warriors.
Yeah.
I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
They have so many, the way they play, the way guys just fit into their roles, and a guy like Andre Iguodala and Andrew Bogut, the way these guys just accept their roles, that's a unique situation.
Yeah, I think I get exactly what Joe was saying in that, I've liked them all along, but watching what they've been doing lately, it does make you almost feel like everybody else is playing for second no matter what happens. Now, it is 4 months away, but that's as impressive and as confident a team as I think I've ever seen. Now, maybe it's because my memory's fading and I don't remember the Bulls of the 72 and 10 Bulls, but wow. I mean, every night you just watch them and you have those not just wow moments, but now they're wow stretches.
And they win so many hustle plays. If you turn the ball over and get sloppy, the next thing you know, you're down 12 points against them. All right, let's think warm thoughts and bring in our Indians beat reporter as spring training is approaching, Paul Hoynes. Hoynesy, how are you?
Hi, guys.
All right, Hoynesy, we're getting to spring training. Early feelings on this team. Can they win the Central Division?
As presently constructed, no. They need some help offensively. I think they're going to add a bat or two, but I still don't think they've got enough offense to compete in the division to win it. Especially, we got in face of when you look at the way the other teams improved during the off season.
Well, Hoynesy, it's Bud here. I think you're going to be hearing from Craig Stammen because I think he believed he was the missing link. Do you at least like what they've done with their bullpen?
But I don't know what they've done with their bullpen. they've got 30 pitchers coming to camp, and I'm trying to weed through these guys. I think in the bullpen you've got Cody Allen, you've got Shaw, McAllister, and Manship. Those are four guys, and if they carry 8 relievers, there's still 4 guys, 4 spots open. So they've got like 10 lefties coming to camp. I mean, they've got like 5 lefties coming to camp. And they've got Jabba Chamberlain coming to camp. Yeah. I mean, they've got guys they're pulling out of the woodwork. So
they still have Thatcher coming too.
Yeah, Joe Thatcher. Joe Thatcher, Ross Detweiler, Tom Gorzolani, guys named like...
You're just making these names up now. I know you are.
Felipe Paulino, who didn't pitch in the big leagues last year. They've got a bunch of interesting characters coming to camp.
Does Paul Ossenmacher have any innings left in that arm?
No, I haven't seen Ossie. The nicest man in the world that didn't talk to me for a year.
Yeah. You don't know that, do you?
I didn't know that, no.
I'll tell you about that off camera.
All right, Hoynesy, another position that I think a lot of people have questions about is the third base position. Obviously, Giovanni Urshela played pretty good defense there last year. There's questions about his bat. What's the third base position look like right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. Urshela probably, has a leg up on the position going into camp. The question is, if they add a Juan Uribe, or a David Freese, a kind of free agent, what effect does that have on Urshela? I think, the plan at the end of last season at least was to go to the off season and try to find somebody that could help Urshela, where he wouldn't have to face a tough lefty or a tough righty, or if he was struggling, he wouldn't get buried at the plate because they love his defense. And so I think, that's where Uribe and Freese and even Jose Ramirez come into play here. They're also counting on him being healthy for the first time. Last year he had the back problem in spring training and hardly played. Then he had a shoulder problem that bothered him after he got called up. So he really wasn't 100% offensively. He's a big guy. He's got some pop, but he just had trouble making contact.
Paul, at this point last year, some of us, and meaning me, kidded ourselves into thinking that, well, it was almost as if they were getting some different new players back, like Kipnis and Swisher and Bourne, who had all had bad years the year before. Is there anybody on this team that fits that mold of a guy that you can pinpoint and say, that guy is going to be much better this year than he was last year?
Yeah, I think there's always a couple, Bud. I think Yan Gomes is probably, first and foremost. He blew out his knee early in I think September 8th. April 8th or 9th, the first week of the season. Missed 6 weeks with the right knee injury and really struggled to get back. I think he's a key to this team. He's a right-handed hitter. They like to hit him down at the bottom of the lineup, kind of an ambush hitter. And, if he's back to 100% and can hit like he did 2 years ago, they're going to be a much better team.
All right, Hoynesy, last question. Let's talk about Francisco Lindor. Obviously, hopes are very high for him. But look, the way this lineup is constructed, you can't really hide guys. We know it's not uncommon for guys sometimes to take steps back or have to go back down for a little bit. Are the Indians counting too much on Francisco Lindor this season?
Dan, I think they do a real good job managing expectations, and I think they'll do that with Lindor. I think the question with Lindor, with me, is without having Brantley there, hitting behind him, probably for the first month of the season or so, how is that going to affect him? And where is he going to hit? Is he going to hit two? Is he going to hit leadoff? That's a big question to me. And you could drop Kipnis down into the third spot. I think that's what they might do. Kipnis hit third and maybe Lindor hits first and Rajah Davis in the second hole, something like that. But I think Lindor is a really, really good player. He's the first player that has brought me, that's encouraged me to think that, the farm system and the scouting department, kind of hit on a guy. It's like finding Manny Ramirez or Tomey, one of those guys, where they found somebody and he's a player. He's a real player. And I think he'll handle the ups and downs of his first full season very well.
All right, Hoynesy, thanks for the time.
Thanks, guys.
And now, I don't know if Paul Ossenmacher stopped talking to you or not, but...
Nicest man in the world. Stop talking to Paul Hoynes for a year.
That's amazing. We'll never stop talking to you, bud.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks. Well, hey, the NFL draft is still months away, but the Indians don't open until April. The NFL season's over. Cavs probably don't play a meaningful game until June. So mock drafts all you want. It doesn't matter. They're here, and they're here to stay. The Browns have too much riding on the decision to take a quarterback for the issue to find a back burner. Not when Josh McCown's season and Johnny Manziel's ended pretty much the same way, with a helicopter ride. Boom, boom, okay. The challenge is, everybody has an opinion about this, and the challenge is separating the suspect quarterback opinions, Fedor, from the ones that might actually point us to where Hugh Jackson will eventually go with his decision. When analyst Mike Mayock says he ranks Carson Wentz of North Dakota State the #1 quarterback on his board, we're reminded how tough an assessment quarterback really is, more than how off the mark Mayock has been in the past, though we do remember that too. If you forgot this headline from March of 2011, our first commenter did not. Logoless points out that yes, in fact, that did happen, ranking him ahead of Cam Newton. In Mayock's defense, his final mock draft had Carolina taking Newton #1 overall. So the process is fluid, and sometimes there are clues, like Ron Rivera not even attending Gabbert's Pro Day. A Pro Day Gil Brandt, for another, raved about as much better than Newton's. So honest mistakes are made, though not everybody sees it that way. This commenter suggests Mayock secretly consults with the Steelers, get this, and tries to screw the Browns out of their picks. Because yes, the Browns, not the Bengals, not the Ravens, are the ones that worry the Steelers most, right? Quarterback is such a volatile issue, both for the importance of the position and for the mistakes made at the top of the draft. Picking a quarterback is scary and exciting at the same time. For once, Browns fans seem ready to roll with whatever the head coach thinks best. We see that in these comments. Hugh will make the right choice, says Grey Wolf. I want who you wants, says Russ Belt. People haven't felt this good about having a quarterback guru in the building since Mike Holmgren. Sorry about that. I'd say the problem isn't with the projection and the scouting of quarterbacks as much as it is with the development and the commitment to those guys once you get them. Nobody wants to wait for a quarterback to improve. If Hugh Jackson doesn't get that chance to pick his guy and develop him, the endless cycle will continue. Unless, of course, through free agency, we find out that Jimmy Clausen was the answer all along. Chris.
Wow. Ouch.
Do you think Fedor will watch this at all?
A lot of what the kids like to call shade being thrown at Chris Fedor here by
listen,
by Bud Shaw.
I think everybody, if they were honest with themselves, would say that they've looked at one draft in the past 4 or 5 and thought that one quarterback was going to be the guy. It just so happened in that draft in 11, you had Locker. I think you had Ponder, right? You had Gabbert.
So, yeah.
You had a number of these guys that everybody overdrafted. And I think that's in part why Browns fans are a little concerned that that might be taking place again this time.
It's just, it's so hard to judge these guys because the college game is so different. Not just the style, but, you're not facing 2 to 3 really good cornerbacks every week. There's guys you can pick on. The hashes are a little closer to the side. It's just such a different game.
If you err on the side of 6'4", 6'5", strong arm, mobile, and maybe a guy who's actually played out of behind center a few times, which I think Wentz probably did more than Goff. At least you can see, and I think that's what these guys, the Harvard guys, are trying to say, is that they're going to try to find a process, and people hate that word, I know, but they're going to find a legitimate reason for making decisions that they make. They may not all work out, but at least they'll have put that and vetted it through the same parameters that they used on other decisions that did work out.
And listen, you've been out there in training camp. When there's a quarterback that walks out that looks like a quarterback, everybody's just shocked to see it.
I know.
Even Josh McCown.
I fell for Whedon too much for that reason, because he had the strong arm. Even though the scouting report said he doesn't react well at all under pressure, which is something that we saw over the course of a few seasons.
All right, thanks to Kay Cabot, Joe Vardon, and Paul Hoynes for joining us today. Thanks to Bud Shaw for filling in for Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Lobby. Thanks for watching.